An Ideal Retreat by Michael Griffin, the second book, Night of a Woman's First Dreaming. 14. Stairs, wake and descend, stumble and fall. And something started, then she was awake. A cold body, lying amid wetness, ears full of static, everything in the world hissing gray. What was this place? Noon sat up, looked around without recognition. She couldn't remember how or why or where. Her wine glass lay overturned, now empty. This explained the spreading damp in which she lay. A pinched nerve made her neck ache. Her stomach lurched as if in answer to poison. What time was it? She squinted, sought backward, looking for any connection. One thing she remembered: this place had no clocks. Terribly thirsty, her mouth felt so dry it cracked inside. Sticky. What sounded good was cold sparkling water, which reminded her there were still the bottles of Pellegrino in the fridge. Her mind reassembled the shape of the house, the relationship of all the rooms, the kitchen that was all the way downstairs. As she thought about it, didn't the situation seem odd the way she recalled it? A refrigerator fully stocked, with exactly everything she wanted or required. All she recollected now seemed open to question. Nobody would abandon their kitchen that way. This house was somebody else's vacant home, wasn't it? So that made her just a squatter in a strange, lost version of nowhere. Noon swung her legs over the side of the bed, feeling unbalanced, as if still drugged. Her feet found the floor. All she needed was something to drink. Cold water, nothing else. Atop the dresser she found her iPhone, but no amount of button pushing or screen swiping would make the display light up. This seemed ominous, as if distantly connected to a movie she'd seen, or maybe dreamed she'd seen. That screen, too, had gone black. Both screens disconnected from the world, too far gone, beyond all boundaries to have any hope of... No. Stop it. What did that kind of nonsense even mean? The phone's battery was dead, that was all. Sometimes Noon found herself pursuing insane thoughts, digressing off into self-defeating craziness. It had to stop. She remembered to take along the empty wine glass, and staggered toward the door of the bedroom, then out to the landing. The open stairwell was a black void, lacking any indication of objects or boundaries below. She stepped off the edge into the dark, not seeing, only hoping something would catch her. That first step met a stair below. She stepped again. Her right hand clutched the rail in desperation, as if everything might give way utterly at any moment. By this halting process, she descended most of the way. Near the bottom, she began to believe everything might end up okay after all. She might be safe. Only a few more steps might have remained when she decided to release her grip on the rail. Her body tilted toward where she thought the next step must be. Her weight shifted. She hesitated, then overcorrected and started to fall. Too late, she tried to catch herself, felt her body launched beyond balance or control. Forward, flung outward toward space, no longer tethered to anything solid. She lost touch, went weightless into the dark, and realized she must be unsure how much farther she really had to fall before she landed. Her mind fled to the moment outside, when she dived for the swimming pool and in midair began to doubt, to wonder if what awaited her was only the water she expected, or something less forgiving. Noon struck the hardwood floor. The wine glass broke in her hand, and shards scattered across hardwoods. As her weight came down, jagged glass punctured her palm. She lay stunned, unable to breathe. After a moment she gasped, as if resuscitated, and writhed in an ineffectual attempt to right herself and stand again. It's all just another dream. Listen, she told herself. Her eyes were no help. Everything was far too dark. At least if she had to stumble, the fall had been only the last few steps. Though she remained unable to see, she imagined her face must have come to rest precisely in the center of those unexplained footsteps she'd seen on the hallway floor. She remembered all that clearly now, with such detail and precision she was tempted to doubt any of it could be real, almost preferring to attribute the matter of the footsteps to a vague, dark motion picture only barely recalled. What persuaded her to believe was one certainty, that if she were to end up in a place, it must be somewhere she most feared. Further, a smell, something like an engine, old, black grease. Her other senses could explain where she was, even if she couldn't see. A rhythmic thrumming emanated from the door, just beside her, within reach. That was something she didn't need to see in order to know. Sound alone was adequate to create a sense of direction, of dimension. That, or maybe the machine existed only in her imagination, and she merely listened to her own heartbeat pulsing within her ears. Noon found herself moving, reorienting, starting to rise. Though everything ached, she rose on her knees amid all the broken glass. She tried to stand, wavered, almost fell. Even in what had seemed utter darkness, she now believed she could discern some visual hint of the sharpest edges of the broken glass surrounding her. These blades glittered against footprints glossy black, a filthy dance lesson diagram. Her hand groped, testing the void, until she found something, the edge of the little desk, its surface, then the lamp. She pressed the switch. Everything changed. Though she wanted to look around in the light to confirm the existence of all the things she had imagined she perceived without sight, she now felt more afraid than when she had been unable to see anything at all. Maybe if she found her way into the kitchen and gulped down enough cold water to clear her head and calm her beleaguered heart, she might be able to forget everything until she woke again the next morning. She might be allowed to return to a reality in which none of this had ever happened. Sometimes that was how life worked, and avoidance of some painful or threatening truth allowed things to shift enough that she could back away from worrying and gradually forget, as if the problem had never existed. Even the most sickening fear might end up being unfounded after all. "I never fell," Noon whispered. "There are no footprints." As her body moved, perspective shifted. She took steps, waiting for her feet to be pierced by glass, but was able to walk without pain. The next thing she saw was the open, bright refrigerator, and her hands doing exactly as she'd envisioned, twisting the cap off a luminous green San Pellegrino bottle. She recognized the insignia, was able to read the label, see every detail. The bottle was real. She drank, then poured the rest into the remaining wine glass by the sink. When the glass was empty, she refilled it. 2 glasses, topped off, consumed the entire bottle, the same as her experience with bottles of wine. A full pour meant only 2 glasses per bottle. Ian always repeated this, saying a bottle of wine was not 2 glasses, but really 5. He insisted on this concept of true drinks, as if some measures were straightforward and honest, while others revealed self-deception. Noon found the corkscrew and opened another bottle of the Malbec without cutting off the foil. She'd been cheated of the last of the prior bottle, which had spilled all over the bed when she fell asleep. It was still night, nowhere near morning. It wasn't difficult to yank the cord through. Then she poured to within a half-inch of the rim. She wanted to drink fast and deep, but instead lifted the glass, held it before her face, and tried to see through it. The wine was too dark, opaque purple-red. 1 sip would be enough. She allowed herself a taste, savored and swallowed. That was something she always tried and failed to convey to Ian at times when he complained about her drinking too much or too early. He didn't understand how much she enjoyed the taste of wine. It wasn't just about intoxication. Noon didn't drink only to forget or to soften sharp edges, but because she enjoyed wine itself. Ian claimed to understand the matter more clearly than she did, but Noon believed it was a subject Ian barely gave any real thought. He merely repeated ideas he'd read or things he'd heard from Gavin, who had spent his final half century sober after surviving various nebulous and secret troubles in his 20s. Most likely, these words Ian used were catchphrases the family had directed at Joda, whose own lengthy slide into unassailable addiction had turned every other Radox into an expert. The wine glass was empty, so she refilled it. The bottle fit perfectly into 2 pours. Noon found comfort in the perfection of this even measure. 1 into 2. She drank some of the second glass, so she wouldn't need to worry about spilling on her way back upstairs. In the doorway to the great room, she lingered, surveying the room, but without looking at the spot where she had fallen. The desk lamp remained lit, dispersing feeble illumination, most of which spilled dim yellow over that spot, the one place she didn't want to see. Noon took in the arrangements of objects around the room, confirmed the floor plan without obsessing on details. She shrugged off the danger of jagged glass, the threat of inexplicable footprints, and ran toward the stairs. As her foot touched the bottom step, a thought came to her. She imagined someone else was inside the house. But she was running, and that was safety, freedom. Her destination was set in mind, and nobody could prevent it. She would be able to close the door, shut her eyes, sleep the rest of the night. Panic drove her up the stairs by twos. Her feet crossed. She stumbled, but caught herself. No wine spilled. Her knee ached where it struck the edge of a stair, but that sensation was distant. Up again, lifted by fear and intensity of focus to the landing, where blithe shadows moved in tangible darkness. What was happening here? Noon wondered. What was solid? Which senses could be trusted? She flailed arms, trying to disperse some congregation she doubted truly existed, like a swarm of gnats that disappeared under scrutiny. Once inside, she slammed the bedroom door, compartmentalized, safe. No more hurrying. Now she could put away the fear. Noon sat hunched at the edge of the bed, breathing so hard she was afraid to drink the wine yet, lest it spill. She caught the smell, wanted a taste. Steadying with 2 hands, determined, she raised the glass. A single deep swallow took the wine down halfway, remedy for a racing heartbeat. Her mind slowed. The contents of her psyche seemed to back off a short distance and politely turn to face the wall. The television remained off, black and quiet, no static. She couldn't remember how she had left it. So stupid. Always being fearful. Seeing things that weren't even there. After such a nice day, why did she have to spin out like this? She hated herself, ruining a good thing. It had been so long since she'd had a perfect day, and this day had really been perfect, hadn't it? Noon wanted to call Ian, and she didn't want to call. Part of her had formed a resolution that to call would be a surrender to the status quo, something she could no longer tolerate. Anyway, her phone was dead. The charger was out in the car. If she wanted it, she'd have to go back downstairs. What was there to say to Ian, really? If she called, the moment she dialed, her mind would begin racing in anticipation of a million predictable recriminations about glasses of wine consumed. No thanks. Her mouth was still dry, sticky, as if glue had dried behind her lips. She rubbed her eyes. Too much sun. That was all. Now she couldn't walk without tripping. This house, she didn't really know her way around yet. It wasn't second nature, the way a person could walk around and dodge obstacles in the dark in a place where they'd lived long enough. Didn't people fall more often on unfamiliar stairs? She thought so. Fall down, fall up. Noon couldn't remember which. She really didn't want to drop off asleep with a full glass again, so finished the wine and placed the glass carefully on the table. Her eyes closed. Somewhere, she couldn't recall exactly, something had broken. The problem was when and where. Just had to remember not to step in whatever it was. I had to look out. Don't step. 15. Sleep. Late visit. Indistinguishable from a film. Half forgotten. When he came to her bed, his weight shifted the mattress. They lay front to back, both on top of the covers. Ian's shape, his familiar smell. Though he said nothing, she knew. His hand squeezed her hip, then slid down her panties. So dark in here. She'd been right before. She hadn't needed to call. Ian must have known he ought to be here, despite their plan that she come alone. All resentment vanished. She felt glad, relieved. A small offering of care could unwind years of neglect. His skin so hot, his breath. Noon pressed back against him, felt his firmness. After everything, their endless complications and so many disappointments, the two of them still fit. Their shapes corresponded, like a lock with a key. He pulled her up onto her knees. His dark outline loomed over and behind her. His thrust pressed her away even as his hands, low on her waist, pulled her back again. Insistent, forceful. She moved with him, giving in yet resisting. Yet, here, to force back against his pressure felt cooperative, not contrary. It was exactly the way her body ought to move. So many things fell loose and floated away, already forgotten. Problems became distant. She might never remember her past. The force he exerted against her resembled an expression of anger, but in this context it was exactly what she wanted and required. He said nothing, only moved. He slapped her ass, tugged her hair, pulled her head sideways. She contorted, twisted around, turned back almost far enough to see his face. Even as her body continued working hard against him, she wanted to see, but straightened and forgot. Her nails clutched behind, dug into his thigh, scratched and tore flesh. He never relented, seemed he might never stop, only to continue harder, harder. She couldn't remember the last. The air was so thin here. She couldn't breathe. Lungs rasped, gulping in desperate need of oxygen. They were both carried away, slick with sweat. Pleasure ached within the center of her. Was it really pain? Muscles clenched in heightening urgency, bound together with all the hatred she felt, and the forlorn wish to be relieved of it. She saw something, a vision of another time, a memory. She recognized the scene, Ian's place in it, but sought to deny the recollection from her own mind. Ian striving behind someone. Was it Noon herself? Their positions were exactly like now. Had she changed so much, lost so much of herself? That woman was not her. Flash of an idea, she had to disappear, find a life of her own. This notion gasped within her, light-headed. What if she had known it must come to this? Everything she'd once wanted, the life she always dreamed for herself, the woman she'd become, was in no way connected to the girl. Though no single detail of her now could be reasonably complained over, the convoluted arrangement in its entirety was a bundle she'd give anything to dismantle. Without a sound, only pressure and hot insistence, he reached culmination. She felt the change in his rhythm, a trembling pause, then a forceful heat beyond words or reason. He stood and shifted away, a silhouette outlined against a wall of churning noise, that static again. Where are you going? She didn't mean to ask anything of him, had resolved to demand nothing at all, but couldn't help herself. Her question arose automatically, just as he had arrived without any plan or time to form intention. Noon sprawled, panting. alone on the bed. Her breath returned as her heart slowed, and the drying sweat cooled her skin. She turned to face toward the pillow's softness, and drifted within mind. Ian? He should return to her, lie down, if not talk, at least sleep. The bed remained empty. She alone had remained here, but nothing else. No one. No footsteps, no sounds, no inference of presence. Only darkness too thick to breathe. Solitude made tangible, thick enough to choke. What if her life could still change? This thought rode on in a wave of anguish, a gut surge not unlike the burning of a clenched muscle and seething anger that arose during sex. Despair surged, then departed into lassitude and slow breath. She decided, I'm drunk, that's all this is. There was one thing she knew she could make happen. Just forget it, Noonie. Forget everything.